Hey, church, welcome back to More Than That. We have next to me, Pastor Raphael Gondola, and Pastor, you had chapter 2, verses 1 through 3 of Genesis.
Yeah.
And this is a really, really interesting portion of Scripture because God rested.
Yeah.
And that is something that is, for us, it seems kind of strange to think that God rested because he's God. He's always doing something. You know, we in the church always say, oh, God's working, he's moving. But we don't see the seventh day close like we do the other ones. So God's still kind of resting. And it's just an interesting play to, and for us to kind of live in that type of scenario and paradigm where, you know, we are living in God's rest.
Yeah.
And, you know, what does that look like for us to live in God's rest? And you kind of tackled a little bit of that on Sunday, and it was really, really good. But things do tend to get cut for various reasons, and whether that's time or it just doesn't nail home you know, a specific point that you're trying to make. So if you had, you know, an extra 10 minutes or so to really, you know, jump into whatever that was, what was it?
Yeah. So just to give you a summary, you know, on Sunday, I just said basically like that we see God actually calling us to rest. First of all, like when you walk into this text, you see a God who we know his strength never wanes. He never gets tired. He could work for days. But after he has created man in his image, he then creates a pattern, demonstrates first of all that his kingdom culminates in rest. That like, and he is showing that as a design for all creation, including humanity. So he rests as a way, not because he is tired, but because he is showing you a pattern of the kingdom. And what I did is that like I also just kind of showed you the big picture of the fact that like everything is what we truly desire is rest. And then in the New Testament, Jesus comes, offers rest, but we are also moving. The story is really looking at what we say consummation. It's a time of rest. It's a time of enjoying God's presence and being with him and enjoying everything, being restful again. So it begins with restful relationships between God and man, man and woman, man and creation. Everything is restful. That's why God actually culminates it with rest. But then also it shows us that that's what we truly need. We're looking for rest. And so if you kind of listened on Sunday, really just like my thing was calling us to say that God's seventh day invites us to cease from striving, right, which is stop from striving, and then calm our souls, which is stilling our souls, being still and knowing that he is God, and dealing with all the anxieties that are there, like, and really recuperating in terms of like your soul, and then also savoring his goodness, which is celebrating his goodness. If the chorus of creation is good, 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 very good, like it's a time for us to slow down and to tune our lives to actually see where his goodness is vibrant in our lives. This is where we slow down, we play, we do the things that fill us up once again, and we notice like we can count the little blessings, and we cultivate gratitude, and we look around and we see where God has truly blessed us. A lot of times we burn out when we're not even aware of like where is it that you see God's grace at work in such a way that you stop and you praise. Like, and in fact, that's probably one of the things that I would say is threatened in a culture, in a highway speed culture. is maybe where we do not slow down to see where is God's grace evident in my life? Where is it working? Where am I seeing God's arm and God's sightings and all those things at work? And then lastly, it's a time for us to worship him, which is actually like reading out to like to see him for who he is, so that when we see him clearly, then it puts into it removes the disorientation and it reorients us to who we are and whose we are. So it's a time when we set aside time to worship. And so really, like, one of the things that I think suffered a little bit more on Sunday was really maybe just this last one, when I was just saying, like, what is this worship? Worship is who we are. We are made in his image. So we find, so it gives you now the telos of the human heart. Like the chief end is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. It shows you that, like, no, you work, you do all the things that you're called to do, but you've got to cease and stop, and you've got to worship and tune your heart once again to sing his praise. I love musicians. I watch them every time before you play. You tune your guitar so that it can actually be in tune. Our hearts can actually just, like, because of everything that's happening, people happening, sin happening, the world happening, everything happening all around us, we can be out of tune. It's like there's this guitar in my house. I keep it on a guitar stand, and one of the reasons why it's so annoying to play that guitar is because it's in a place where it's so tempting for everyone who comes around it. And they just strum it, and they would just totally take it out of tune. So every time I have to play it, I have to tune it. Like,
you're getting in good practice. You're a musician in the making.
So but it's so annoying because like, and it's actually pretty interesting that the reason why I haven't played it much is because I haven't tuned it. Like, and every time, like, someone who's a guitarist comes to my house, I ask them, and I'm like, you know better how to tune a guitar. Could you tune it for me? And then after they tune it, I play it and I enjoy the music. Even my morning times can become worshipful times. But when it gets out of tune, I get annoyed and I try to tune it, and it's so hard for me to do that. I have to go to an expert, someone. And then so I've had to be asking someone to teach me how to tune it. This is, our hearts are in a very high trafficked area where literally things are happening all around us, and we need the expert, like, tuner of our hearts. Like, where sometimes we come in with broken strings, sometimes all we need is, like, now sometimes we need all new strings altogether. And that is now, like, where we can look at the psalmist. Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Why? He leads me to greener pastures, right? Like he knows what my heart truly needs. He feeds me. He restores my soul. He knows what's broken, and, like, right, like he and then at the same time, like, he leads me beside still waters. He knows where I'm skittish. He knows where I've got anxiety is coming to try to get the best of me. And, like, he can lead me beside still water so he can refresh me. He restores my soul. And he leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake, right? Like, and he will direct my life when it feels like it's got no direction. But not only that, from there, he will find me, like, maybe where I've strayed, like sheep, like sheep. Like, he will come and he will find me where I'm stuck in this dark valley. And he will come and he will quieten my soul so that I'm no longer fearful. For there, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Or if I find myself in a valley because I'm in just like this place where because of human suffering, I'm there. But he comes in, restores me. And not only that, and and then after that, he takes me, he celebrates me, prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. He anoints my head with oil, puts a new fragrance within me. And then, you know what I mean? Like, and he pursues me. I understand that I am a pursued individual. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. I understand that I'm a pursued, and then I respond in pursuit as well. And I will return. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever. So I just like, you're looking at this, there's gotta be a moment in life where we reorient ourselves to the God who truly rules our lives. This is what Bruce Watke said, and I didn't get to read this. By observing the Sabbath, Israel confesses regularly that their God is Lord of all. He made the Sabbath holy to celebrate his rest from all the work of creating that what he had done. In the creation, God ordains the hierarchies of government in assigning the luminaries to govern the day and night. This is the cool part. The human beings to rule the earth, and the Sabbath reminds God's image that they are his regents to serve him. He puts luminaries in their place. He puts human beings to rule over what? The earth. And then he says, the Sabbath day is to remind you, I rule over you. Mm-hmm. And so it reorients us to this God who rules, but this God who also relates. And says, hey, you have a God who relates with you. And later on, you're going to get to see that over and over. But then you have a God who rules, who relates, and who also rescues. Mm-hmm. What are you stuck in right now? What is it that you need? You truly need. There's got to be a moment where you do a hiatus from the world. You turn off your phone, you turn off everything that's distracting, and then you do a soul-searching mission of like, search me, oh God, and see if there's anything that's not pleasing inside within me. Mm-hmm. Like, take Psalm 139, for example. Like, Lord, you know me. You know me when I sit. You know me when I stand. Before a word comes out of my mouth, you know it all together. And then after that, he's like, where else can I go away from your presence? It doesn't matter where I am. God, you're able to rescue me from the lofty ambition, like where I'm like, if I said high, but you're able to rescue me from even the bottom of the bottom. Mm-hmm. Even there, you say, if I say darkness shall hide me, darkness is not too dark for you. Like, and then after that, he's like, God, and then he goes inside and he's like, you know me. You know, my frame was not hidden from me. My days were written in your book, everything. It is like, you have wonderful thoughts towards me. I am fearfully, wonderfully made. And then after that, man, he's like, God, man, those who hate you, don't I hate them? And that's actually where maybe God is like, yeah, you kind of love them. You know what I mean? Like, and then and he confronts and he says, search me, oh God, and see if there's anything. And that search me, oh God moment needs a slow down place, a sanctified space and time that allows you to kind of binge eat gospel meals. And then at the same time, and then wait and let him be able to speak. It requires you to now stop producing, and it requires you to kind of like stop being a human doing to become a human being. And that's actually where you align yourself with the being whose image you're made in. Yeah. And there you are reminded that yes, he's called me to work and to keep, but yes, he's also called me to what? To come back, and he rules over me. He relates with me. He rescues me. He refreshes me. He restores me. And then he actually what? He is the one who reorients me to what truly life is all about. So that's for me was like there. So
which I mean, so you brought up kind of like during your PhD work, like how you weren't sleeping that much.
Oh yeah,
and I remember having conversations with you about that. Not necessarily about how much you were sleeping, because my dad, I feel like can go on 2 hours of sleep and work 3 days straight. Like that man is ridiculous. But there's a difference there between like physical rest, like your body just needs that. But also there's a difference between that and spiritual rest or mental rest. Some people call it soul care, some people call it mental health days, whatever you want to call it. Like the conversations that we were having were like, what are you doing to recharge? What are you doing that's just fun?
I think I remember. You kind of was just like, hey man, I'm concerned. And you were like, I'm concerned. Where's the place? And which is actually, I remember, because that was a gift to me. Like, because you took a different stance. Like, and I remember just saying I was so grateful for you, because you were more concerned about, like, we were talking about deep work stuff. And you kept asking me, are you resting? Are you like where? And then not only that, you were like, hey, what about your family? Are you having enough time for your family? And part of that was like, it was just so good for you to be able to say that to me, and still say that, like, hey man, I'm, you know what I mean?
Like I want to be in the same boat that you're in. But we need to not neglect the first calling on our lives as husbands and fathers. Like you and I have a primary calling, which is not first and foremost the church. It is first and foremost our family, and then the church. So if we can't take care of our family and invest in them and do all of those things, we're not going to be effective leaders in the church. I remember just basically saying to myself, like, how grateful I was for that, because, like, for me, I want to always be part of a church to lead a church where I can also be part of a church, not only just preach community, but where I also experience community. And in those days, you gave me that, because like you understood that, like, if I didn't slow down, there was no way for me to do deep work and get it done. And so I remember that, and it was really it was very, very good for me just to be able to experience that. So and I mean, you kind of already brought it up, and like being able to go deep. It takes a long time to be able to do that. It takes what Anders Ericsson called deliberate practice. It's gonna take you a long time to be able to go as deep as you want to, and not only in God's word, but into your family life, into what pretty much any aspect of life. It's gonna take a lot of, hey, I'm putting my phone over here on the table, I'm flipping it over, if not turning it off completely, so that, like, I mean, I'm wearing my watch right now, because if I just turn it over, my watch will still buzz, it'll still do all these things, it'll distract me. But if I turn my phone off, that goes away, because it's connected to my phone, and it gets its life from my phone. So if I turn my phone away and phone off, what does that look like? If my watch is getting life from my phone, also how much life am I getting from my phone? And if we're able to actually do that, throw it on the table and say, this is off, I'm now doing time with family, with God. Because I mean, so as you were preaching, I was you were hitting all of my JP Moreland notes and everything. So I as I was reading or I should say, just before I started reading the book Deep Work,
Yeah.
I read the book Finding Quiet by J.P. Moreland, who was one of my professors. And in the book, he says, properly understood, we will see that presenting two members of your body, your brain and your heart muscle, to God as instruments of righteousness, which includes emotional flourishing and overall health, can be important in replacing anxiety and worry with deep peace and joy. Because whenever you started talking about, what are you using to calm your soul? Are you resting in God?
Yeah.
Is God the source of your calm? Or is doom scrolling and Instagram the source of your calm, or the source of the calming of your soul? Yeah. I mean, obviously, you can it's nice to just get lost in the doom scroll every once in a while because it's mindless. Yeah. It is refreshing in a sense. But it's also, it's a black hole. Like,
it is.
Once you start going, it's hard to get out of there. So, with rest, and finding that calm, we had a couple questions that came in, and they were really asking the same question.
Just different ways.
Yeah, just different ways. And basically, what about the seventh day and us? So I'll just read one of them. Does any part of the command to rest on the seventh day still apply to us? Are we to literally obey that?
Yeah.
And should Sunday look differently from any other day?
Is that the same, or?
It is roughly the same. It's getting at the two questions are really getting at, are we as Christians supposed to literally set a day aside for worship, for all of these things, for resting in God, or is it what some theologians call a framework? Is the creation week a framework? Is it literal? How do we wrestle with that? And then I want to take it one step further and ask, because we both are in ministry. And I'm sure there's other people in ministry that ask this question as well. What about people in ministry? If Sunday is supposed to be set apart, what does that say for ministry people?
No, that's good. So basically, like, that question requires me to kind of go back and just, like, basically, first of all, just say, I'm drawing this from Andy Naselli's, what is the biblical theology of Sabbath? And he has some of the things, like, very, very good kind of, like, ways in which we look at that. And when you look at that, it says basically, like, the old covenant required, obviously, God's people to keep the Sabbath. But God's people today are under now the new covenant, not the old covenant. So first of all, we have to kind of just, like, start right there. Old covenant, new covenant. And here is where in church history we've fallen into different places. And I think I mentioned that. So some believe that God's commands to keep Sabbath maintains. So the old covenant to the new covenant, either by maintaining Saturdays or maintaining and transitioning Saturdays into Sunday, right? But, like, this is, like, where there's some people would do that. But then some of them believe that Christ transforms the Sabbath commandment. Which is, like, where at least I would stay more in the camp of, like, Christ came and transformed that Sabbath commandment. And I will kind of walk through what that means here very soon. Because those who believe that Sabbath maintains include, for example, I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist. And then not only that, like, and there are some people, for example, like in the covenant theology place as well, who are like, it's the Lord's Day. This is what, like, and then so on Sunday you do nothing, right? Like, and here I'm talking about, like, there are some people that say you don't mow your lawn, you don't do anything whatsoever, you just rest totally. And then, but like then there are those who believe that Christ transforms, transforms like the Sabbath, and that's where, for example, you've got like some still that are covenantal, but then you also have like maybe the crazier side, which is dispensationalism, but yet when you kind of look at it, you can look at it and just see 3 periods where at least you can kind of get to understand this part. Like that days before the old covenant, like Sabbath is before the old covenant, under the old covenant, and then under the new covenant. Mm-hmm. First of all, before the old covenant, you get to see now, like this is where Genesis 2 verse 1-3 is at, where God creates the world in 6 days, and then he rests, and then God does not rest because he's tired or he's lazy, and here he rests because he is setting a work rest pattern for humans, and then at the end of the day, it's also as well identifies him as sovereign over the whole world, which is good, but you don't see God actually commanding Adam and even some of the patriarchs after that to actually like to refrain from working on the Sabbath, and so, or on the Sabbath, which is the 7th day. You just kind of, that's just so vague. You don't see that, but yet at the same time, the principle of rest is there. They are meant to, like, because God rested, somehow like there is a way in which like there is a rest rhythm, a work and rest rhythm.
Yep.
We are not told anywhere where that was happening, but there is a work and rest rhythm.
Yep.
That is actually happening, whether it's from Adam all the way to Abraham, right? But the moment we get a little bit more explicit on the 6th day, 7th day resting is actually now like where at least like is now when we get to the 10th command, like to the slaves, right?
Yep.
Like in Egypt, and then so
that's going to be Exodus and Leviticus.
So which is actually basically like and which is what Andy Naselli kind of says 4 observations are noteworthy. When you look at, for example, when you look at Exodus chapter 16, and then when you look at like Exodus chapter 19, that keeping the Sabbath appears to be new for the God's people at this point in history. There's no evidence that prior to this event, they religiously refrained from working on the Sabbath. And he says, number 2, when the people in the wilderness broke the Sabbath, Moses rebuked them. But later in the Old Covenant, the covenant break, the penalty is to be death, right? The Sabbath day, the day of rest, was a gift, and it was a present that God gave to Israelites, and the Israelites dishonor God when they did not value God's gift. Sabbath was a way to sanctify God's people by testing them whether they would trust him to sufficiently provide for them. So you see them even like, for example, like in the manna, they still get up and they still go. And they try to like actually gather on a Saturday, but then there's nothing. And then so under the Old Covenant, you get to see like, for example, there's a guy in Numbers 15 who's caught gathering sticks. And he's brought to Moses and to Aaron. And finally, like, then Moses says to the Lord, what should we do to this man? And God says, put him to death, because they're not really understanding the importance of this. And so, but at the same time, you are seeing there, once again, if we're seeing who is getting to hear this, these are people who are just basically like protecting the people that had just come, and like, for example, like out of actually Deuteronomy chapter 5, like when Moses re-gives the law to the younger people that had, and the older people have died, he gives them, and this is what Andy Naselli kind of says, six observations out of that. The Sabbath command protected vulnerable people such as servants and sojourners. So it's important for them to rest, because if not, the servants and the sojourners will just keep getting worked through that. The head of the household was responsible to ensure that every member of his household rested on that seventh day. Sabbath command required God's people to cease working, no plowing, no harvesting, kindling of fire, gathering sticks, or buying goods and food. But it did not require them to gather. It did not require them to gather for worship. Israelites were free to assemble to worship on the Sabbath, but the essence of Sabbath command was not to worship but to rest. Right. So there's that part. So you see, kind of winding down here. And then keeping Sabbath was a sign of the temporary old covenant, right? And we see that in Exodus chapter 31. And then breaking the Sabbath was a what? Criminal offense, penalty is death. Exodus 31, 35, and Numbers 15. You see that, and then just kind of seeing. This is actually because people are stubborn, they keep on breaking that. But then, in fact, when you get to Deuteronomy 5, the grounds for the Sabbath command is no longer creation, but it's actually Exodus 20. Exodus 20 verse 11 is that God created the world in 6 days, and the seventh day rested. But it doesn't follow that because God roots the Sabbath command in creation, that therefore the Sabbath command is universally binding, right? And so that it is binding for God's people it's not binding for people underneath the new covenant. And so there is no evidence that God requires his people to cease working prior to Exodus 16, and the New Testament reveals that the Sabbath command no longer applies to God's people under new covenant, and you'll see that here in some of the texts that even Jesus, he says that I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is made for man and all that stuff. And Jesus, in fact, is going to get in trouble a lot more because of actually breaking the Sabbath, healing on the Sabbath, showing back actually what true rest was. He is the source of true rest. And so that's why he's even healing in the Sabbath. He is actually trying to actually show them that no, this is actually what rest was, the time when everything was to be good and mankind was experiencing flourishing. So I'm going to heal on the Sabbath so that the Sabbath comes with a certain kind of flourishing that comes in. But then
I was going to say, which goes against the kind of mantra that I heard growing up. I don't know if you did or not, but kind of the living for the weekend type of thing, where it's I work so I can take time off. No, I take time off so I can work. That's the biblical switch, paradigm switch.
Yeah, so it kind of just the work rest is kind of there, and then but when you actually kind of see. When Moses reinstates the Ten Commandments, the grounds for the Sabbath, it differs from Exodus chapter 20:11. The grounds is that God delivered the Israelites from Egyptians, which implies that the Israelites were oppressed. Israelites were oppressed to work without sufficient rest. And I mentioned that. Israelites knew what it was like for the oppressor to victimize them by forcing them to work without breaks, and God graciously reminds the Israelites that his command to rest on the Sabbath was a gift for their good. The Sabbath reminded Israelites that God delivered them from the cruel forced labor in Egypt. So let's get into the Sabbath now in the new covenant. Now, we can look at the Sabbath in the New Covenant in this way. It transforms those, for us, we look at it, first of all, under typology. That the rest God gave in his old covenant people is now found in Jesus. Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath. What we're looking for is rest in Jesus. So therefore, it transforms the Sabbath into this. every day then becomes a Sabbath. Every day is a day when you and I are called to rest in Jesus.
Yeah.
So number one, we're called to rest in Jesus on a daily basis. But now, not only that, but you get to see now, this is what Andy Naselli says. The only one of the 10 commandments that the New Testament does not repeat is the one of observing Sabbath day. Why? The other 9 commandments maintain under the new covenant as part of the law of Christ, but Jesus transforms the Sabbath commandment. Jesus is born underneath the law. He keeps the Sabbath. But then we see him actually, like when the Pharisees are insisting that he obeys the Sabbath, that people obey the Sabbath. That's when he actually says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest," which is Matthew chapter 11. And you're seeing Jesus even going to the grain fields, and he does everything there to actually show that he is the Sabbath. But then healing on the Sabbath is actually just pointing us back to once again the intent of actually this was for you to experience wholeness. Mm-hmm. So they're just kind of like 3 things that end up actually kind of getting kicked out because of the old covenant. In the new covenant, it's going to be food laws, it's going to be circumcision, it's going to be the Sabbath in terms of strict 7-day,
mm-hmm.
right?
Which I am very, very thankful for the breaking of the food laws. I very much like my shellfish and my bacon.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It culminates in Jesus. And then when it culminates in Jesus, we see that now, the Sabbath now versus the Sabbath and just basically the Sabbath now versus the Sabbath then is that believers should not revert back to the type of Sabbath and that type of Sabbath anymore where but we are meant to actually now observe the new Sabbath, which is actually now where every single day it's pursuing Jesus, pursuing obviously rest on a daily basis. But then when we now go into the Reformed confessions, I kind of looked around and I just looked around and mm-hmm. then see in Reformed theology, which is what I love and I espouse quite a lot, is that basically the key principles is that one day in 7 should still be set apart. The day changed from 7th day, which is actually Saturday, to first day, Sunday, in honor of Christ's resurrection, mm-hmm. which mm-hmm. is actually what ended up happening in church history. It moved to actually Sunday mm-hmm. because of mm-hmm. resurrection. But then it actually then gained a new purpose, which is a day of worship, resting from ordinary service, and anticipation of actually eternal rest. I will tell you why then it becomes a lot more, I would say that if you're looking for a day, there's some people obviously this becomes a Romans 14 kind of deal. There's some people who feel strongly that it should be Sunday. And there's some people that still kind of don't mm-hmm. but I look at it as a Romans 14 issue. Where it's actually people who eat meat and people who don't, people who observe days and people who don't. And it should not become divisive.
Yep.
And it should not be, you're not Christian because you're not doing this. It should be actually I think Sunday is a lot easier, personally. I think it's a lot easier for you to just go ahead, set apart a day and set it apart as a day of rest. Because, why? Because you can now be able to actually start maybe sundown on Saturday, make sure that at least you're not staying up doing crazy things. You at least can actually set it apart, do restful things Saturday into mm-hmm. Sunday. You wake up and then you go into the Lord's Day. and then you worship, you recalibrate your heart, and you do the inside. You go home, you cook a meal, invite family. Just don't do anything, like, invite family over, eat, like, play games, enjoy family and all that stuff until maybe sundown as well, where you've just had a very restful. It's just a natural, it's a nice rhythm for you to just do. What about just that day? Just set it apart.
Yeah.
And because it's a day when almost everybody's already doing that anyway. So it's easy for all of us to take that day. For example, there was a time in the 1940s, I think, somewhere, where the British they had a campaign of keep Sunday holy again, or something like that, like where basically like
make Sunday holy again.
Yeah, like making but like sanctifying Sunday again. Making sure that nobody was working. So it was a day where husband and wife and everybody's kind of coming down. Children are not doing anything. Everybody, like, it's an easier time. That's what I would say. It's an easier time to do that.
It makes sense.
Yeah, but is it binding? I wouldn't say that it's so. Like, but for me, from a Reformed tradition, I see the advantage in that.
Yeah.
Treating it as men, like this is Resurrection Sunday. And then if it's Resurrection Sunday day where every single week I at least commemorate resurrection, like, and I gaze upon him and I let his word reorient me, rescue me. It doesn't matter what had happened this week. I take a gospel bath. But not only that, like, I ask Lord to resurrect my affections for my family, and I enjoy family again. I enjoy everything. But it's pretty interesting when you go to some of these confessions, the Reformed confessions, for example, Westminster Confession of Faith. When you ask, should Sunday look different? The Westminster says yes, because the Lord's Day is a Christian It's Christian Sabbath. So it's a day that of worship and rest. The larger catechism, question 116 says, yes, it's a day of worship, rest, mercy. Whole day sanctification is important. Heidelberg said, yes, it's implied, but you see what I mean? Like, so it's implied in there. It's a day of worship, spiritual rest, eternal Sabbath. But then the Helvetic Confession says, yes, it's a day chosen for worship, rest, and reflection. London Baptist Confession, 1689, says, yes, it's a Sunday also for rest. And even just so, all of these, the reason I see why they would say that. And for me, I will tell you the truth. That's one I have had to look at it. There's some people where it's not feasible for them to do so.
Yeah.
But I don't look at it as actually then a law as much as it's actually what we would say adiaphora. It's a conscience issue.
Yeah.
Like where I just know that like, and we're working on this in our household, for example, Mgandla household, where at least we can slow down everything. But because I'm in ministry, it's not always possible. Like Heidi knows, I get home and sometimes like I just like, because it's a strenuous day for me. I wake up, exercise hard because that gives me like just like a little bit of like, hey, you need this. Like I am able to get rid of a whole bunch of stress in the morning. I exercise, but then I come, I preach and I do all that, meet people. By the time I get home, it's around 2 o'clock. And then usually like she would either allow me to take a walk, kind of decompress, or she will allow me to just take a nap. This Sunday it was like, it was a longer nap than usual because our Saturday had been crazy. So I take a nap and then I wake up and then basically just kind of do some life kind of just giving things. But so for me, my day off is Monday. You call me, my voicemail is going to tell you what. If it's Monday, I'm sorry, the time for me to rest with my family. I then set aside and list Monday as a day of rest. But when I say a day of rest, what do I do on Monday? On Monday, every single day, obviously,
that's when you pick up the guitar.
Yeah, that's when I pick up the guitar. But I actually just do, so for example, on Monday, I will cut grass because that's a great day for me to throw in an audio book, listen to a fiction book, or listen to, right now, I'm reading, For My Own Soul, Spiritually Healthy Leader book. And then I'm reading Holiness of God by R.C. Sproul. And then I'm listening to I'm reading also another fiction book. I will get lost in a book while I'm just walking around because I don't want to be sitting in my house, because then I will sit and start working on something or answer that email or do whatever it is, because text messages are coming in. So I've got to slow down in that way. This week I took the dog to the vet, and then I'll get on the river walk, and usually I'll run I ran probably 2 or 3 miles, but some of them I just run them with a book, or some of them are just, this week I was just it was with silence, kind of answering almost every question that was popping up, praying through that stuff and doing, get home. And for example, I remember just just sitting down, doing what renews, got on a phone call with a friend, called Sihle, one of my friends, Sihle in South Africa. We talked, we joked around, because he renews my soul. Called another friend, Reward, also as well, talked my language, just kind of laughed about a few things. The things that fill me up, I need a conversation with a friend.
Yeah.
So I make a conversation with a friend a priority. I talk to my young brother, and then I sat down to write something that I wanted to write that had nothing to do with, because writing as well, it's just
it's refreshing.
Yeah, it's refreshing. So,
as someone who likes writing, it's refreshing.
Yeah. So I write, do a few things.
Yeah.
And then after that, what did I do? And then obviously, as I'm doing all that stuff, I'm preparing for a meal, because I go and pick up my kids. As soon as they come home, we do usually have an early dinner there. Prepare and then grill some stuff, made sure food was ready so that by 5 o'clock, we're all sitting around the table, eating and laughing and doing all that stuff, and we end up that night with just, so on Mondays, I prepare. That's when we feast with my kids. We sit around, at least we sit at the table and we all eat, and we, check on how, highs, lows, buffaloes, do all that stuff. Yeah. Obviously, we'll read the portion of scripture and we'll sing together. It's just something that is, I just want it to be refreshing to everybody. Then after that, we'll play cornhole or we'll play kickball, whatever it is. And then we get along with the day. So
yeah. And I mean, so with the Sabbath, just in general, it is, and I had to wrestle with this once I stepped into full-time ministry, and that was really, really difficult, because now my wife and I's schedules are I wouldn't say completely opposite, but they're different in the sense of she has dedicated Saturday and Sunday where she doesn't work. And being in full-time ministry, I'm working on Sunday. Yeah. And working here at the church, there are things where this past Sunday, I was just going and going and going. Yeah. And I'm like, holy cow, this is a lot more than normal. I'm glad that I took yesterday to just rest. Yeah. We're working on finishing half of our attic before our next daughter comes. Yeah. And that to me has been super refreshing. Yeah. Not because I'm working, but because I'm doing something with my dad. Yeah. It's not just hey, we need to work and get this done. It's let's do something together. Yeah. Let's invest in each other, not just in the house. So it's that type of thing. But in general, though, like I'm very much like you. If I'm sitting down at my computer or doing something, I'm probably going to pick up a book that's work related, or I'm going to start continue writing something that's work related, or get on like Chat GPT and figure out what schools are out there for what programs and stuff like that, because it's kind of fun to do that. But even then, that's work related. That's not something that necessarily gives me rest. In Jesus, I'm kind of working in that sense. So it's a hard play. But one of the things I really like, the whole sundown aspect of what you were saying. Like, so one of like part of our nightly routine is my wife and I, we watch a show together. Like, you know, we once our daughter goes to bed, she does her workout. I go and I work for an hour or so while she's working out. And then because that's, I mean, obviously, you know, being primary caregiver during the week, and then having just strange schedules, that's a time where I can just sit down and focus. But then after that, all bets are off for the most part, and then I'm sitting and I'm spending time with my wife. We're watching something together. We're doing something. We're not game people, but you know, we're working on ourselves by just being there. And that's sometimes that's enough, just being present. Like, you know, I'm thinking about like Job's friends. Like, they didn't have to say anything. Job just wanted the presence of his friends there, and that was enough respite for what he was going through. So then
so when it comes to Lord, and this is now like where it lists like you know, when you read Hebrews chapter 10, for example, it's 10:1 says, since the law has but a shadow of good things to come instead of the true form of these realities, it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered every year, make perfect those who draw near. So basically, under the old covenant, God's people had to offer sacrifices. They had to do all these things, but Jesus comes and fulfills this, and Hebrews says once and for all. So, and this is what Andy Naselli says. Similarly, under the old covenant, God's people had to keep the Sabbath, but under the new covenant, God's people no longer have to keep the Sabbath, because Jesus fulfills that type by giving the ultimate rest, right? Believers should not revert back. But what they need to now do is also, there's this part like where it's like, but that doesn't call you to totally remove the wisdom that comes with. There's still the wisdom that's there that says that, like, hey, Israel was following a 6+1 pattern, right? Like the one being actually what? Sabbath. But the early church then now follows what you were talking about, the 1+6 pattern, which is actually like, man, we follow, we celebrate like Jesus and his resurrection, and then we go forward. And when you start looking in the New Testament, I think everyone has to do this wrestling here. I don't know if I can call it a law, but I also just think you need to wrestle with it too. Still. You see what I mean? Like, I can't call it a law, because when you're looking at there, for example, like Acts chapter 20, verse 7, 1 Corinthians 16:2, it's like the first day of the week they are worshiping. Why? Because Jesus is, and you know, you're seeing this. And not only that, Revelation 1:10 calls it the Lord's Day. But then at the same time, but we can't say that like, hey, Sunday is not special. It is special because you need to prioritize gathering with God's people. Hebrews 10 is going to say that. You need to prioritize gathering with believers and being with them. And so that's very important for that to happen. Resurrection Day. And then so there's some then that's why now, like in some of in the reform circles, which I swim in quite a lot, and being a reformed Christian, I see the use of why they would say it's the Lord's Day, but I probably maybe differ in making it a law versus actually like I see it as a grace given. Yeah. And see it as like the Lord blessed it and he said this is, and then so therefore then it's a day where you and I need to just like think through and say, all right, if not then when?
Yeah. Yeah, because we have a lot of factories in the area. Yeah. Knowing the factory, like you're there, the possibility if you're not like a 9-to-5 like office worker or like someone in the upper echelons of the factory, you potentially are working on a Sunday. Yeah. And if you have that hard and fast law of Sunday is holy, it's the Sabbath, you have to rest then. What happens if you have to work, if that's just your schedule? Now if you make it a law, now you are in sin because you've broken the law. Which is now Romans 14. Yes. We're going back there. Yeah. And so it's like, where's the grace in that? How do we work through together as in a post-industrial revolution society where, the factories don't rest? I mean, I think they should. I've seen it work well. But still, it's just not how it is. Now, if we are going to enforce that upon people, now one of the questions that I always ask, this is as an apologist working with students, working with other people. One of the even when I was preaching on Mother's Day at a different church, I asked the congregation, is the way that you're presenting Jesus bringing them closer to Jesus or pushing them away? Yeah. And if you make, Sunday as a law, the Sunday Sabbath as a law, and that you have to be there if you to be considered a Christian and a good law abiding Christian, like to kind of throw some of that terminology out there. Then you're adding. Obviously you're adding some things to Scripture, but also, how do you answer that question? Are you pushing someone away because they're breaking a law that you made? Yeah. Or are you inviting them in and say, hey, it's okay. Let's find a time together to like work a Sabbath into your week. Yeah. Because, if not, then you are definitely saying, I don't want you here, and neither does Jesus. Yeah. Because you can see now, like, where I'd say, like, you've got people that work in camps, you've got people that work like, and what I would say as a result of that is that, hey, make sure you look at your time budget. There's life as you know it. Look at your time budget. Consecrate a certain time as a time of rest, and then watch what then happens. As a time of rest, I think obviously, like, if it's easier for people to at least, like, if you're already kind of in that rhythm where both of you as spouses are like right there on a Sunday, that just makes it like, it gives you just a good rhythm of putting a hard stop, which is what my 4 points was. Like, you stop, you cease, and then you stop, you rest, and then you celebrate, and then you worship. And if you can at least just kind of set a specific time like that of just saying, okay, when is it that we're gonna have and some of you guys, it might just be bleeding in from Saturday into Sunday, where Sunday morning becomes like the ending of that cycle. You're worshiping, you know what I mean? Like,
and then maybe you started like doing all the other things, like maybe on Saturday, like, and then, or maybe you pack it all into a Sunday, or maybe for you pack it into from a Friday evening all the way to Saturday. That's actually like, or maybe for you, I know some people that work through in the prison system where their only off day is probably in midweek.
Yep.
But like that midweek needs to actually just be able to, you know, this is now like at least what I would say when it comes to that. It's about I had it right in here in my notes. What you need to do then is to plan it, right? What you need to do is to plan it.
But you're not planning it in pencil. You're planning it in pen.
Yeah. There you go.
You're not penciling it in to your schedule. You're penning it into your schedule.
I like that. Yeah. So you plan it, and then not only just do you plan it, you guard it. Like, because something else is gonna come and want to take over that time, and so you guard it. You plan it. You guard it. And then you plan it, you review in that time budget you have. Everybody, if you are struggling to actually find it, here is now like what I would actually say. It's going to require you being very honest in terms of like, okay, what's my time look like? Take a calendar, Monday to Friday to Sunday, and then put it all those blocks of time. And then actually take all the times that you just know that like you take and you say, I'm in church here. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what's happening.
Yep.
And just be honest. Be honest. Like, and be honest about the times when you're just binge watching stuff. Be honest about the time where you actually like are scrolling and you're doing stuff. Be honest about that. And just be honest and look around. Because we usually say, I do not have time. Instead of actually just say, no, but you do have. Where is it that you're actually just like, you could literally be very intentional about that time? A lot of us would guard and say we don't have time because we haven't really sat down and become honest. And here's the thing. A lot of us don't want to look at our budgets because it's going to tell us the reality of where we spend our money. A lot of us don't want to look at our time budget, calendar. And because we don't want to see like that, like, I spend a little bit more time on video games or maybe playing with this or doing that and that. So because we don't want the truth, then we don't look at that. No, it's going to take you honestly saying, God, you've given me 168 hours. Everybody has that time. This is what Larry told me. Everybody has that time. We all, like, so you can't say you don't have time when the other busiest person says he has time. Like, so everybody has time. We just decide where we put it. We need to look into our buckets of what's so important. And then we need to actually like then look, and then we take that bucket, take the big rocks and stuff like that. We put the big rocks in there first before we fill it up with sand. Because we know if we fill it up with sand, the big rocks won't fit. That's usually like what we do. So we take it, we plan it, and then we review it, and then we actually like ruthlessly guard it. Some things I've got to introduce you to this, the power of saying no, which is my wife has really just kind of like worked with me on that, because I used to just say yes to everything. And then to help me kind of slow down, she's been so helpful at saying, you need to say no. In fact, she sent me that very text on Sunday after preaching that sermon. I was like, hey, so and so said we need to come over and do this. And then she was like, no, we've had a very busy week. You just preached about rest. And then I was like, okay. And so we rested. And then here's the thing. And then get in, like what you're saying, practice it. Practice it over and over and over. But make sure that it's a mixture of actually like a time of connecting with the Lord and a time, I say pray and play. And I'd say drains and feels. Like recognize the drains and feels. Avoid the drains during your day of rest. Like what is it that drains you? Avoid that. But what is it that fills you? Some people would say, don't pick up the lawnmower. But then some people are like, this is one of my very sacred moments.
It's no one can bug me.
No one can bug me. And then so I'm like, hey,
yeah,
to each his own.
Yeah.
Jump in there. And then, but at the same time, you come out of there saying, and this is what in his book, Buchanan, in his book on rest, he says that the Sabbath is a time when you come out. Like, Sabbath should be a time when you come out caring about what you deeply care about the most fully.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Caring about what you deeply care about fully. For me, I love God. I care about, and not only that, I want to guard watch my life and my doctrine, like make sure like I'm watching my children, like leading them, making sure my wife is watered by the word, make sure my children are led by, you know what I mean? Like all those things. If I come out of there caring about those things, then that's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's...
yeah, there was something that I had, and it just now escaped me. It's one of those things where, you know, as we pen these things in, it's going to be difficult, and that's good. It's meant to be difficult, because if it was easy, then I'm pretty sure God would have flipped it. And said, hey, no, you need to make time for work, not for rest. But that's what it was. Your Kindle being pulled up is exactly what I needed. So just as a quick little challenge to you guys, you all that are listening and watching, you know, as you are, you know, looking through, you know, your time budget, especially on your, like I'm a Samsung guy, so I have a digital well-being app on my phone that just kind of comes standard with it, and it tells me what apps I spend the most time on, what apps take the most battery life, and a whole bunch of other things. My challenge to you is to do an inventory, see which apps you spend the most time on, and then if you still are desiring to pick up your phone and pull it out, challenge yourself to make your Kindle app the most opened and time spent app.
That's good.
Because if you're doing that, you still get the fix of pulling your phone out, but instead of getting the fix and doom scrolling, so now you're hitting that point of like no return. Like maybe the law of diminishing return. You're hitting the law of diminishing return. You have to pull it out more and more and more. But then the more that you pull out your Kindle, there's not diminishing return. It's exponential return, because you are now being poured into rather than draining yourself.
You're using the servant in your pocket.
Exactly.
To do its work. That's good. And that's good. I like that.
And like, you know, there are apps out there that will literally allow you to assign time limits to your app, to individual and specific apps, so that like if you exceed your time on Instagram for the day, it will not let you open it. But you can leave Kindle unlimited. Not maybe even take use of Kindle Unlimited. There you go.
Weird.
I'm a dad. I can make those jokes now. Raphael, this conversation has been really, really good. Talking about rest, in a sense, for me was restful, because it just reminded me of the need for rest, and to really get me thinking about, you know, am I actually resting on the day that I have set aside? Whatever that looks like for you, ask yourself, am I actually resting that day? Am I following those 4 points that you brought up? Or am I just saying that I have it be just to kind of check that box off? So again, as a reminder to you all, this is not a replacement for the Sunday sermon. This is a supplement to it. this actually would be a good thing to consume on your rest day.
Yeah.
Because this is could be part of your worship. This could be part of it, but it's, again, not a replacement for being in a community and experiencing community as a part of your worship.
Yeah.
So, Raphael, I just want to thank you for taking us through and reminding us of rest.
Yeah.
We live in a highway culture and a fast food culture, and we don't always think about rest. If we do think about rest, we think about living for the weekend. But I want to challenge you all as we go to not just live for the weekend, but rest so that you can go out into the world.
That's good. That's good.
So with that, have a blessed week, everyone.
Thank you.